Hey, welcome to Pages of an Art Journal. Today's art journal process is inspired by an art prompt using the color combo orange and pink from Facebook group Makers of Mixed Media Art and Artists. When I go to start an art journal page, the first thing I like to do is pick out some products. I may not use everything shown and add something else later. Then the next thing I do is prep my pages. Since I use a lot of sprays, I like to place some kitchen paper towel behind to catch some of the overspray. I try to remember to add some journal tape to the seam of the pages. Because I like to apply a lot of wet medium and water, this tape will help to not bleed through to the other pages. I don't mind if that happens, since it's just my journal for creating and experimentation. The way I like to art journal is to use focal points from images fussy cut out of pattern papers. These are usually Stamperia paper pads because they have amazing designs. The process of fussy cutting is a therapeutic part of the process. I usually have a show playing in the background or listening to music. Once I got over the fear of cutting up the beautiful pattern papers, I discovered how to make them into my own design. As I cut them out, I start placing them on the pages. I may start out with one layout, but it usually changes for the finished design. I had first thought I wanted to use a cat image, but soon changed my mind once I saw the hummingbirds. I play around with the arrangement until I get the composition right. When I first started art journaling, I had no idea what composition was or how important it is in art. This is something I am still learning how to do. I chose to not use both the cat and the hummingbirds because it would have been too much on the spread and covered up the background. I like to use stencils, usually with texture paste, to make them stand out. I feel there should be a balance to the page where your eyes first land on the focal points, but then have areas in the background to see after that are softer. If there is too much going on, it's hard to really connect with the spread. This is not the only way to create, this is just my version that I enjoy doing. These are a couple stencils from PM Artist Studio that I couldn't wait to use. I just fell in love with the designs. They are made from Yupo paper, which is something I have never used before. Normally stencils are made from mylar plastic, so I thought it was interesting to see the difference. My favorite way to use stencils is to apply texture paste through it. I love adding texture to the pages to make it more dimensional. This paste is formulated to absorb the ink much like paper does, but there are others that will do the opposite and resist the ink. This is where experimenting with your products will help you better understand where and how to use it on your pages. I'm really enjoying how these stencil designs are turning out on the pages. I didn't apply texture paste through the entire stencil on the left side, only certain areas to keep it simplified, but for this large circle one used on the right, I wanted to get the entire pattern. Once the texture paste has dried, I first spray a bit of water. The inks will blend better on a damp page and it helps reduce a circle spray mark. It essentially prevents the ink from sinking into the paper right away, which would make it harder to blend after. I am only going to be using pink and orange colors for the background. Because I am planning on using a resist technique next, I start it with the lighter tones, then using darker tones on top. I find it works best in this order because these inks are water-based and will blend together. If I started with the darker colors, then spraying light on top, they would not show up. I think it's basically a mix of petroleum and alcohol because I created a DIY version that worked the same. Due to the petroleum product, this will resist the ink applied on top, creating a very nice distressed look. I am experimenting here, applying a bit to the stencil texture paste to see if it'll also get a bit of a resist there. Again, I spray a bit of water to the pages to prevent any spray marks and to achieve a smoother blend of colors. Although just because this product is a spray does not mean they have to be used this way. I also like to apply them with a paintbrush. This allows more control over where I want the color to go, then applying more water to help thin the ink and get it to move throughout the stencil. This is a great way to bring out the details in a stencil design. This is also where you would want to use a darker toned ink. I saw a couple areas that I missed applying the micro glaze to, so I did that before spraying the darker pink on top. It's always so cool to see the pattern emerge since you barely see the micro glaze due to being translucent. This is a fun technique to try using different color combinations. Look how beautiful that resist looks. As you dry, start to gently remove ink from the stenciled resist areas with some paper towel. You will see the design start to become more defined and will only see the lighter pink color applied underneath. These are Birdcage die cuts that I thought would work well with pattern papers. I used Lindy's Moonshadow Mist, which is a walnut colored ink with brass mica in it. Now for the fun part of putting the pieces together. This is where I decide on the final composition and glue them down. Can you see here that if I use too many images and dies that you would lose the background? I hear a lot about creating intuitively, which is great, but I find with just a bit of planning ahead of time that it can really influence the end result. Because I cut the images out first and had an idea of the placement of them, that influenced where I applied the stencil design and the orange and pink colors. One final step before I glue down the images is to apply ink to the paper edges. This is definitely an optional step, but I like the effect it gives. The papers looked more defined against the background, creating almost a subtle shadow around them. Archival ink works best for this because they won't bleed when you're gluing them down. I recently started using this glue and have really loved the adhesive strength of it. This works well for pattern papers since they are a heavier thickness. I push down on the pieces with a paper towel to catch any glue that seeps out. It also helps keep my fingers relatively glue-free. Another thing that I do when placing images is to leave some of it hanging outside the page edges. This will get cut off later. I don't always do this, it just depends on the look or composition I am going for. I am so happy I remembered I had these birdcage die cuts. My mom had cut them out for me a long time ago and I've always wanted to use them in a journal spread. There would have been an empty space there and these fit in just perfectly. I tied some brown yarn to create a look of them hanging on the pages. This is the part where I start to add some finishing details. I like to wait till after I finish the background and placed all my focal points. Embossing powders are so awesome and add another layer of glittery, textural goodness. I used an embossing ink pen just so I would have control over where I want to add the powder to the stenciled texture. This is another way to enhance a stencil design. Now I am starting to cut off anything that is hanging past the page edges. Don't throw anything away yet because sometimes they can be added back onto the spread. Sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. You will see I do this next with a couple pieces. Another optional step is to add ink to the journal page edges that will give it a bit of a framed look. You can use one color or even a couple, and the outcome depends on how heavily you apply them. I am using a foam blending tool here and just adding a light application of a brown toned archival ink. I'm going to use the Moonshadow Mist brown ink with the brass mica again that I used for the bird cages to create some dark shimmery splatters. Covering the pattern papers with kitchen paper towel helps protect them from the splatters I am applying. A sentiment is a great way to finish off a journal page, and these stickers are perfect. Thank you so much for watching, and please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified the next time I post an art journal page. Until next time, happy art journaling!